every woman's experience with perimenopause is absolutely unique to them. Some women breeze through with barely a symptom, some have a short sprint, and others like me end up in what feels like a damn ultra marathon. Welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast. I'm Jo Clark and I'm so glad you're here. And this is a podcast for women who are ready to break free from outdated stereotypes, rediscover themselves, and embrace the endless opportunities that midlife brings. Each week, I'll share expert advice, actionable strategies, and inspiring conversations with incredible women who are redefining what it means to thrive in midlife and beyond. From health and wellness to reigniting your purpose and passions, this is your go-to podcast for feeling empowered, supported, and seen. And midlife isn't the end. It's your time to shine, rewrite your story, and create a life that you truly love. So let's get started. Hi there and welcome back to the Redefining Midlife podcast. And before we dive in, I want to thank you for tuning in because it means a lot to me that you've taken the time to listen today. And if you've ever left a rating or a review or shared the podcast with a friend, thank you. I am truly grateful. And these small actions all help to boost the algorithm to show the podcast to other midlife women, which can mean that more midlife women have access to the conversations and information that can support them through this stage of life. And I also want to share a recent Apple Podcast review that deeply moved me. And it said, "Now that I'm in menopause, I'm learning all about the information I wish I'd known before and during perimenopause. This podcast provides women with the most amazing and impactful information about the most transitional phase of our lives through stories and experiences of other women and experts. I recommend it for women of any age, but particularly for women in their 30s and beyond." Thank you so much to whoever wrote that lovely, lovely review. And this is exactly why I've decided to record this episode. This week, I'm talking about something that's deeply personal. Now, I've shared snippets of my peri journey before, and that, one's about migraines and so on, but I've never really spoken so openly about my full perimenopause journey. And that's what I want to do today. Because what I know is that every woman's experience with perimenopause is absolutely unique to them. Some women breeze through with barely a symptom, some have a short sprint, and others like me end up in what feels like a damn ultra marathon. Now, I've been in perimenopause for over a decade, and as of this recording, I'm the age of 57 and a half years old, and I'm still not through it, and I'm not on the other side. I've been having periods for over 45 years. I started my periods at the age of 12. Now, I haven't yet reached menopause, and based on everything I've been through, I'm not going to at least the age of 59, and perhaps even the ripe old age of 60. And I'll take that back. I won't say old age of 60 because that's not far off of me anymore. That's the young age of 60. But statistically, that puts me in the top 5% of women. And as every year passes by, that percentage just gets smaller and smaller. We know that the average age of menopause in Australia is around 51, and most women are postmenopausal by their mid-50s. And we do hear lots of stories about early menopause, but the voices of those who reach it much later, well, they're rarely heard. And I know some women in my own Instagram community have mentioned in various messages to me that they're also late peri warriors. Well, this week, I'm very excited to share that I am celebrating just over 100 days since my last period. But trust me, my symptoms still tell me I've got a long way to go until I have crossed that threshold. The journey has been long, it's been unpredictable, and at times truly overwhelming. But it's also been full of learning and self-discovery. And my hope in sharing all of this is that it helps you feel more seen, informed, and empowered. So let's just rewind to the beginning when things started changing. Around the age of 45, about 12 years ago, which takes us somewhere around the year 2013. Now, I didn't realise the changes, the differences in how I felt, or the symptoms that I was experiencing was actually perimenopause. Really, all I knew about menopause was simply your period stopped and maybe you got hot flushes. Like the teacher aides I worked with who fanned themselves in the staff room absolutely frantically most days. That was my entire frame of reference. I had no idea perimenopause could begin 10 or more years before your final period, or that it could bring on such a wide range of symptoms. So one of my earliest warning signs was I would be waking up hot. This was new and I couldn't quite work out why. I'd stick my feet out of bed to cool down, and it seemed pretty harmless at the time. But those night sweats escalated quickly. On a good night, I'd wake up at least 5 times. But on a bad night, 10 or more. And those bad nights were far more common as the years went on. And it was also more than just sticking my feet out of the bed. Now, all the covers were thrown off and I'd be a lather of sweat. I had to wait until I cooled down before I could try to get back to sleep again. So obviously the exhaustion I was starting to feel was intense after waking that frequently. And then came heavier and more frequent periods. Now, it's possibly far too much information, so cover your ears if you don't want to hear. But as I joked on the Ladies We Need to Talk podcast a few months ago, the clots that I had during my periods could have fed the cat. Gross, but accurate. And it wasn't uncommon to wake up to what looked like an absolute crime scene. Now, again, I had no idea why this was happening. Add to that, I had worsening PMS, the mood swings, irritability and teariness. I know I was less tolerant, more emotional, and I was more easily overwhelmed. And then brain fog set in. And I guess because I was so tired, it made it even worse. It was just like a cloud that wouldn't lift. I'd forget words, thoughts, names, you name it, I'd forget it. I must admit that it hasn't really improved too much over time, but, I've learnt to live with it. All the while, this was unfolding as I was navigating multiple big life transitions, and I went through a number of those a couple of episodes ago. It really was a perfect storm. And it wasn't until I was 52, which was about 5 years ago, and I was well into my journey, that I even heard the word or term perimenopause. I mean, we hear it everywhere now, but trust me, it wasn't that common to hear the word perimenopause at least 5 years ago. And then when I started to learn more about it, everything suddenly made sense. There was a reason for what I was going through. And just as importantly, I learned there was something that I could actually do about it. So I started focusing on my wellness. I cleaned up my nutrition, I prioritised my sleep, I added more movement, and I worked on ways to manage the stress. I did the lifestyle things. I made all the right changes. And yep, I did feel a bit better and my blood markers improved, my bone density improved, all great things. But the symptoms? For me, just doing those things didn't make the symptoms disappear. I actually got more symptoms. Joint pain, aching muscles, stiff in the morning. I also later learned that I was experiencing what they call some of the musculoskeletal symptoms of menopause. I had plantar fasciitis for a couple of, I'd probably say close to a year. I had coccydynia, where it was extremely uncomfortable and painful to be sitting down because my coccyx which had been fractured during childbirth, but all of a sudden became incredibly sore and tender. I also had and am having tendon issues in my thumb and also in my shoulder. It was as if my whole body had aged overnight. And I also started experiencing some symptoms of GSM, which is a genitourinary syndrome of menopause. That is still a mouthful that I find hard to say. And I've spoken about GSM with Dr. Shan on a couple of podcasts before, so go back to those if you want to find out more about GSM. Anyways, I had all of these things and still the night sweats and the heavy periods and the brain fog. They persisted. It really felt and still feels at times relentless. So for a long time, when I was doing all those lifestyle things, I just resisted hormone therapy. For whatever reason, and I can't to this day work out why, but I saw it as a sign of weakness, kind of as though my body had failed me in some way. And yet, I'd been on thyroid hormone therapy since I was 31. So looking back, I don't know why I would think that this was any different, but I did. So at 54, a few years ago, I decided to look into hormone therapy seriously. I did the research, I read, I listened, I asked questions, and I knew I wanted to try estrogen and progesterone. But when I went to my GP, he wasn't confident and he pushed an older one-pill option. But to his credit, he did refer me to a gynecologist who was more knowledgeable, and safe to say, I didn't try or fill in the script that he gave me. But the gynecologist I went to, she did prescribe me the combined therapy that I knew was probably going to be right for me. And she did tell me that menopause was going to be just around the corner. But it wasn't. Over the next 2 years, I cycled through different HRT options, each with the promise of relief. But my periods kept on coming, and they were coming closer and they were heavier. Most of my cycles were less than 21 days. I became iron deficient, and I became very, very sick and tired of having to change my tampons and buy tampons at the grocery store. So I had a hysteroscopy and a curette. Thankfully, no abnormalities, and thank goodness, so nothing serious was found there. But she did prescribe me at that stage an older hormone therapy, which was said to be my silver bullet. Instead, it triggered horrendous migraines, and I suffered through those for many, many months. I was prescribed other medications to try to control the migraines. I had other therapies like physio and acupuncture. I even had scans to rule out brain cancer. No one thought to question the hormones that I had been prescribed. Eventually, I did. I stumbled across a presentation by Professor Anne McGregor, who was an expert in migraines and women's health. Now, this was the first time I had heard anyone connect the dots for me. Thankfully, I had her on my podcast as well, so other people could hear more in-depth information from Professor McGregor. That was in episode 60, and the conversation I had with her was life-changing. But sadly, I lost months of my life to those migraines. I gained weight because I was so unwell I couldn't move, and I still haven't shifted that weight. I lost confidence, and I felt betrayed by my own body and by the doctor who prescribed the medication without telling me the possible side effects. Now, eventually, I returned to the original combined therapy. It suited me better, but the periods didn't stop. I also had to add vaginal estrogen to combat my GSM symptoms. Nothing has really changed with my periods at this stage. So I talked to a friend who recommended Dr. Sian Hebron, who's now a friend, past podcast guest multiple times, and partner in events with me. She listened and she understood. And together we explored all options. So eventually a second specialist recommended an endometrial ablation. In May this year, I had the procedure. And at the time of this recording, I'm just over, very excitedly to say, 100 days period-free. And apart from when I was pregnant with my 2 children, this is the longest I've been without a period. I can tell you the freedom is amazing. I'm not second-guessing when my period might arrive or when I might have an awkward social situation to deal with. But even now it's not over. I'm still changing my therapy, the amount of estradiol I need to take, and my body tells me when I need to take a little more or a little less. And I still even get the odd period migraine, which was something I got from time to time. I still wake at least once every night, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Nowhere near as bad as it used to be. And I still get the feels of my emotions during the cycles. I still get aches and pains from time to time. And I still, to this day, have brain fog moments like you can hear from time to time when I'm interviewing other guests or going through a solo episode. I just know that I might have to adjust my treatment again, but that's okay. I feel in control now. Now, my peri journey and my experience has taught me so much. And I'd just like to share with you some of the things that I've learned. Firstly, every journey is different. Some are short and mild, some are long and intense like mine. Some women sail through, others face an ultramarathon. And symptoms change over time. Some get worse, some ease, some appear suddenly. For me, they evolved from night sweats and brain fog to joint pain and GSM. And my tolerance for alcohol became less, as did my tolerance for bullshit. I guess you could say both of those last things are positives. Also, focusing on wellness helps. It improved my long-term health, but it wasn't a fix for all of the symptoms. And choosing hormone therapy wasn't a failure. It was a powerful act of care. Also, menopause is inevitable, but suffering is not. There are options, treatments, support. And it takes time to find what works. And what works may change. Finding the right therapy for you and dose is a process. Surgical options can help. Ablation helped me manage ongoing symptoms when nothing else worked. And some women require more radical options like a hysterectomy. And obviously, the majority require no surgical options whatsoever. Be informed. This is really important. There is so much misinformation out there. So trust research-backed sources like Jean Hales for Women's Health, the Australasian Menopause Society, and the experts I've had on this podcast, the leading women's health doctors and professors. Also, talk about it. This phase of life shouldn't be hidden. It's been hidden for generation after generation, and it's time that it stops. I talk about it in workshops, mentoring sessions, and right here with you on the podcast. And I also talk to my girlfriends, I talk to my family members, and I talk to my husband. I keep him updated with what's going on as well. Advocate for yourself is something else that I really encourage you to do. Listen to your body, ask questions, and keep seeking help until you find the support you need. If you're not sure where to start and your doctor isn't being any help, the Australasian Menopause Society has a list of doctors that are women's health doctors that are registered interest with them and have had further study with the Menopause Society. And if you can't find where that information is, just send me an email or a message and I can send you the link. And finally, be patient. I learnt to surrender to the process and just to know that transitions come in all shapes, all sizes and timelines. Mine just happens to be longer than most. So yes, I'm still not menopausal, but I'm learning, I'm adapting, I'm growing, and I'm supporting others along the way. What I've discovered is that this perimenopause journey of mine is a marathon, but it's also a transition. And transitions are powerful. They reshape who we are. They open new chapters. So, ladies, that's my peri story so far. Thank you so much for listening. And if this story resonated, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because when we speak up, we make this normal phase feel just a little less isolating. So I'll see you next week for another episode on the Redefining Midlife podcast. Until then, take care. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you feel inspired to make the next chapter of your life the best one yet. And remember to share this episode with someone else who would love it and connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Jo Clark Coaching. All the links and the details from today's episode are in the show notes or at joclarkcoaching.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe this show on your favourite podcast app and leave a 5-star rating and review. This helps more midlife women find these empowering conversations. I can't wait to chat with you next week. Until then, take care and keep creating a life that you love.